Come on, Mamo. You're almost there. Almost there. There you go. Sorry, folks. We had to wait for Apothecary Diaries to finish. The spring 2025 anime season has finally come to a close. And honestly, it wasn't a really incredible season, which is good for a lot of people because they need a little bit of a breather before the absolutely insane summer season hits. But that doesn't mean that spring was completely without its standouts. I'd argue that some of the shows will actually stand out as classics. We had Tanukis with chainsaws versus trimmers. That was not on my bingo card. Newgrounds produced a new slideshow anime called The Bot. We had our first AI anime, and yes, it was jank as you'd expect. A very interesting performance of the Cinderella story. Paul Greyrat got reincarnated into another world and lost his libido. There's still a family. 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 Yeah, whatever at this point. Hideaki Anno killed off this waifu for artists to quickly make him regret it. Which studio spent 3 years and millions to produce an anime that nobody watched? This witch is a hot mess who just wants to get petted. My little sister can't possibly be this yandere. Oh, my destiny! See, I told you. How'd they not know that Dr. Skinner was right there? How did Himari's brother end up being the most sane person of this stupid show? Studio Elias somehow manages to make ecchi shows not sexy. Glue Factory the anime. Tony Hawk Pro Skater DLC patch released. This studio literally had them cook on Tamaki's ass, and it was epic. Always remember, insert it into the right hole. Reviews for Pop Step are in. But, can't sing, nothing but. Let's see some more ass. People discovered that Black Butler had fan service. Sumugi pats her chest. And Samurai Pizza Cats are back. After finishing the season, I have debated for a little bit, and I've come up with my top 10 anime of the spring 2025 anime season. Be advised that yes, as per usual, any shows that are continuing on to the summer season will not be included in this list, which honestly was very difficult because they're all bangers. But without further ado, let's just jump right into it. Kicking things off with number 10, we have Mono. I feel like we've had quite a bit of a drought for cute girls doing cute things. Yes, we did technically have Laid Back Camp last year, but it feels like overall for the last few years, we've had very few just cute girls going out and doing cute things, having fun, that kind of thing. And to be honest, I'm not like a big fan of Laid Back Camp. I really enjoyed the first season, but I felt like as the seasons went along, I felt like this writer Afro sort of got away from what made it special. Just the girls going out and doing something fun. And I felt like it got too focused on going to location. For those who don't know, there is a lot of like little subsidies and whatnot they can do in Japan where if they have their medium cover a location, you can get kickbacks and whatnot for it. It's to kind of encourage tourism, and I felt like they got too wrapped up in that stuff. So I felt like going into Mono, I was hoping they would kind of go back to where their roots were, just cute girls going out and adventuring. And I felt like they pulled that off. Mono, this first season anyways, did a really good job of kind of returning back to Laid Back Camp season 1, just girls going out and doing something. I also thought it kind of worked out really well having the fact that there's a focus for these characters, and that focus being in doing photography. They have a club, they do photography. It's also kind of a combination of like film as well, so you have to do some film stuff here and there as well. But there's this kind of center focus they can kind of focus on. I also felt like the new cast of characters was refreshing as well. I think having Satsuki, who's the main character, she's very heavily reliant on her senpai who graduates, so she's kind of having to learn to forge on her own and kind of make her own path. You have An, who seemingly really likes Satsuki. I feel like she really likes her, but she's kind of an absolute tryhard. She tries so hard with things and epically fails them all the time. She's just a total mess. You have Sakurako, my favorite girl. I absolutely adore her. She's just way too freaking cute. She's much more toned down, very quiet, very mute, but at the same time, she's an absolute genius. So everything she does it perfectly. Yes, including skateboarding. But I love her character. She's so freaking great. But these poor schoolgirls end up getting tied in with a fail adult. Yes, who I would assume is supposed to be Afro, the author. They run into this mangaka because they were trying to buy this camera online and they never sent the package, and it ends up being this mangaka. And this mangaka is trying to find inspiration for their next work. And so their producer pretty much pushes them to have to go out and, check out locations, get inspiration, kind of like Laid Back Camp inspiration. It almost feels like that's the writer right there. And yeah, she's a total fail adult. She fails at everything. She has to relearn how to drive because she's so bad at it. It's just a fun little cast of characters going out and doing things. And I feel like just like with Laid Back Camp, I think the studio here with Mono did a really great job of kind of capturing the locations they go to. Some of them are absolutely breathtaking. I specifically remember this one scene where they go up to this one hill and it just had this breathtaking view. the wind's kicking up, the characters themselves are getting hit by the wind. It was just absolutely beautiful. And it was really cool because it had a message in there, but the idea of them almost wanting to go to another location. And Sasuke kind of stops them and says, no, look, let's stay here for a minute. Is that moment where it's kind of like, just breathe it in. Let's stop running around constantly and just kind of breathe this in. It really does capture that kind of stuff. And like I said, not too focused on location like they typically do, which was kind of refreshing. But overall, I just really enjoyed Mono. Highly recommend it, especially if you're a fan of Layback Camp. And yeah, technically, if you're a fan of Layback Camp, you'll see a lot of cameos as well, which is really fun too. But yeah, Mono, highly recommend it. My number 10. Moving on to my number 9, probably one of the biggest surprises for me for this season, which is Catch Me at the Ballpark. This is a show that I'm like, ew, baseball show. I don't think I'm going to enjoy this. But yes, the PVs and the arts and everything did capture me with one particular character, which is Ruriko. Yes, Ruriko the Birugaru. It's a Gyaru character who is a vendor girl at the stadium that goes around and pours beers for people. And she just looked like a lot of fun. A lot of what I was getting from the PV, and yes, what I end up getting from the show, is that she very much so feels like a Nagatoro character. Not that she's like aggressively teasy like Nagatoro, but she almost has that sort of vibe about her. She has that cleverness, that teasiness about her, just not too over the top like Nagatoro is. Nagatoro gets a little bit violent at times. She gets a little bit too much, very in the bullying area. That's not this girl. But anyways, when I actually went to go watch the show, I was immediately hooked. And it wasn't just Ruriko that got me. That's the surprising thing. What Catch Me at the Ballpark is about is you have the main character is Kotaro, and he is going to the ballpark in order to get away from his life. He's got his work is just working to death, and he goes there to relax. And he sits down at the stands and he watches the baseball games. Every now and then, this Ruriko girl will come by. She's very much so new to the job, and he ends up being her first regular. And there's a cute little chemistry between the two of them because Ruriko is trying to learn how to put herself out there more, and she's being very forward with him, even though it's very embarrassing for her. And on his perspective, he thinks that he's always teasing her and that she's, yes, very much so social. And the two of them just kind of, over time, grow bond. But it's not just about them. Like, every episode has, 4 different perspectives. It can be from the mascot's perspective. You have this one girl that's working at the deli stand. You have the security guards. You have the baseball players themselves. You have the other vendor girls. Like, a whole bunch of different perspectives, and every single one of them have these really, really wholesome stories. Like, these stories just, most of them just put a big smile on my face because they're so either heartwarming, they have some kind of message behind them. A good example is security guards. You have this very old security guard, you have the new guy that's coming in, and you have this kid that's lost. And how the old man sort of stops the younger guy and helps the kid out, it triggers a memory in the younger guy's mind that, oh yeah, I was lost in this same stadium at some point. I think it was the old man. It's like this really cute little story that has a nice little punchline at the end that just kind of warms your heart. They're really cool little stories. I had a lot of fun. There's a lot of them that are really hilarious. There's like this one guy he speaks English and he sees Ruriko up in the stands and he calls her his destiny. So you have him constantly getting distracted as he's playing ball. It's just a lot of fun. I really enjoyed Catch Me at the Ballpark. It was a big surprise for me for the season. Not the greatest looking show, but it had the writing there at least. So yeah, my number 9, Catch Me at the Ballpark. Definitely check it out. Jumping back to what I was mentioning earlier, speaking of cute girls doing cute things, number 8, Food for the Soul. This show was an absolute treat for me. I absolutely adored it. Yes, one is the fact that it's PA Works, and I just absolutely adore the work that PA Works does. But the other thing that was a massive surprise for me was that it was from the creator of Nanan Biyori. And so I'm like, okay, Nanan Biyori, an original by PA Works, sign me up. And I thankfully was not disappointed. This show just worked on so many levels. The basic concept here is that you have this girl that is trying to get out more. She's obviously has a lot of social anxieties and she's trying to put herself out there. And at some point she decides to help these individuals create this food club. And come to find out, they were trying to make and establish the food club. They were short members. They were trying to create it so they can be lazy and do nothing, which was a disappointment to her because she wanted to learn how to cook. Being as the club managers aren't going to let them do whatever they want because they actually have to do regular reports, this kind of sparks them all to actually start to make food together. And it's kind of this little fun thing of the individuals getting together, cooking things, going to locations, hanging out, all that kind of stuff. Thankfully, yes, for those that know, thankfully, the food's not like a massive focus. Yes, they do food, they eat food, they cook food, whatever, but it's not always like focusing on the food itself. I would probably argue this probably has as much food cooking and eating as something like a Dungeon Meshi. What thankfully was the more focus is sort of the same flavor of comedy that you get from something like Nanan Biyori. I think they do very well at sort of the character chemistry themselves, having them each have their own little personalities and just get into shenanigans. You have Mako, who's kind of like a very Bocchi character, again, very socially awkward. She kind of breaks out of that shell very quickly, kind of puts herself out there and grows over the course of the series, which I did really enjoy watching. You have Shinon, who is a childhood friend of hers. She is a failure, but at the same time, she has connections. So she's kind of reliable in the ability to be able to bring people together, essentially. You have Kurie. She's kind of a big sister type. She works at her family restaurant. She's very much so more knowledgeable in cooking and whatnot. Very much so the one that tries to keep them together. One of my favorites was his Suzuki. She is just a big fluff of lolly fluff. That's the best way to put it. A lolly fluff ball. I think she's just way too cute. Very much so. I would probably argue she's the closest you have to a Renge character from Nanabiyori. She's not quite Renge. She definitely is much more, I guess, mature than Renge is, obviously, for the age there. But I think that she's just an absolute dork. I love her to death. She's kind of the type that whenever she does something, in often cases, it's very goofy and it catches you completely off guard. That's the sort of comedy she has. Like, she knows that this situation is kind of a little bit heavy, so she decides to kind of put her hoodie on, so it makes it look like she has like a sheep head. She starts doing a goofy dance. And the last character, which I really did enjoy as well, is Nana. She has excessive social anxieties to the point where it cripples her. And she kind of runs away from anybody when she first meets them. But once she meets people, once she gets close to them, she just kind of opens up, and she's very much so all about hanging out. It's just a fun cast of characters. A lot of the episodes I absolutely adored. It did a really good job of kind of keeping the pacing kind of going on to new locations, trying out new things, all that kind of stuff. And I think it just turned out really well. Definitely, if you are a fan of Nanabiyori, please go check it out. Like I said before, it feels like Nanabiyori, just not in a rural area. But yeah, Food for the Soul, easily my number 8. Moving on to my number 7. Yes, I have been pretty vocal about the fact that I have fallen out of love with My Hero Academia. I thought the first season was great. I thought the second season was phenomenal, and I still enjoyed it a little bit in season 3, but it has pretty much plummeted for me after that. I've been pretty much watching the show at this point because of cost sunk fallacy. The idea that I've invested this much time, I might as well watch it end. But Vigilante, My Hero Academia was definitely a nice, refreshing take on the Hero Academia series. My biggest problem with Hero Academia at this point is that it's gotten so big and it's yet so very simple at the same time, if that makes sense. Where you do have this big epic battle, but it's all seemingly predicated on this one concept, this one person, and it just kind of feels like it's dragging its feet. Whereas this one's kind of, let's just take it back to simple concept here. You have individuals who are not heroes, and they have no heroes licenses, but they're trying to help out the people in the community. They're trying to stop bad guys, and they're kind of the first responders. They're handling the situation as it happens on the streets before the heroes can even get there and, reduce the damage that's happening. We have our main character, which is Koichi, and he is known as the Crawler. His ability is to kowtow on the ground and slide around, which is seemingly not a very useful one. I think that's the main reason why he's not going to get his license. You have Popstep, who is like a local idol. She's not necessarily a member of their group, or at least she claims she's not really a member. She's just kind of there. And then you have, yes, Knuckle Duster, who is the individual that eventually brings the Crawler into, being a vigilante. And Knuckle Duster specifically is kind of like Deku. He wants to help out people, but he doesn't actually have power. Instead, he sort of offsets the fact that he doesn't have a quirk by just training himself, figuring out ways to get around situations that he cannot do normally because he has no quirk. And yes, working up the muscles, becoming very good at fighting, all that kind of stuff. Using your surroundings and stuff like that in order to overcome somebody's quirk. And so they pretty much working together in order to, again, stop crimes that are happening locally. The main focus being mostly around this new kind of drug that's going around that is causing quirks to go haywire. And so they're trying to figure out who is doing that. End up finding out that, yes, somebody's directly tied in with the person that's doing that. And it eventually builds up into some big, massive climax at the end. Like I said before, I really enjoyed this series a lot because, yes, it's being more focused on these three individuals for the most part. Yes, you do have some side characters like people that really like Popstep. You have a lot of the heroes from My Hero Academia that will get involved here and there, but it stays very focused on these three individuals. And I like the kind of growth that each one of them has. With Koichi, him trying to learn that he has a lot of potential in himself, learning how to use his quirk powers to help people out, Knuckle Duster and his whole struggles that he has with his life and his family, and what really kind of drives him to do what he does, getting the Popsep and how she's technically tied in with Koichi in some way, and having a little romance that's there as well. These characters just kind of work really well together. Their chemistry works very well, and I think the overall story kind of kept so kind of tight-knit that it didn't get too overblown. Overall, I really enjoyed it. Yes, a lot of my enjoyment comes around the fact that, yes, I really like Popstep. I really like her character a lot, but I'm eagerly looking forward to more of this series. I'm really happy that it turned out as good as it did, and I'm looking forward to more. For my number 6, this one is another big surprise for me. I joked about it early on with the season. It's the Paul Grey Rat gets isekai into another world where he's hanging out with Edis, Sylphie, Roxy, Nanahoshi, and he just has this massive harem, and he goes around and doesn't realize how powerful he is, that type of story. But thankfully, the show in the end actually turned out to be really, really refreshing. The whole concept here is, yes, there's this guy, Beryl, and he's working at this sword training dojo in the middle of nowhere. And at some point, one of his old pupils shows up and she says, hey, I have this decree by the king himself to come train the captains. And that drags him into the big city where he's just surrounded by all of these girls that at some point he had trained and they became really powerful. You have the girl who went off to become an adventurer. Now she's like an S-rank adventurer. You have the girl who he trained and she became like a mage knight. And yes, you have the girl that initially brought him over there and she's now the captain of the order. And they all love him to death because of what they did and what they inspired in him. But I think at its core, what I really enjoyed about this show overall was that I really like Beryl's character. Yeah, it's sort of a harem type of show where he doesn't realize how powerful he is because he just thinks that he's some country bumpkin guy that's not really that powerful. But then every time somebody tests him, he's incredible. Like, he just overcomes everybody that comes at him. But there's a reason for it. This is kind of one of those shows where it's not like a parry everything type of show where he's massively OP and he just doesn't realize that he's massively OP. Everything that he does, there's logic behind it. Like, the swordsmanship in this show is actually really well done. Like, you can actually see what he's doing. I think that's one of the things that I feel like the studio itself really nailed with this, and I'm sure that it's probably explained very well in the light novel, and it's translating very well, is that every single move that he does, there's a purpose and reason why he overcomes somebody. A good example is one of the very first fights that he gets. You have the second in command of the order, doesn't feel like Beryl's that impressive, and so he wants to challenge him right off the bat. And you see him, he does this one move that everybody else can't overcome. But then Beryl just basically watches his footwork and kind of goes into his movement that he's doing, which is kind of a spinning attack. And he just kind of goes in with the motion and he's able to parry it. So you get this whole sense of, yeah, he's not incredibly overpowered. He's very well practiced. And so seeing how he utilizes his skills and overcomes all these different people that he faces is really well done. And him as a person, he's just very good nature. I really enjoyed Beryl's character. He's just a cool guy. He's just got a really good heart. So he's kind of a guy that you want to root for in his relationships. But at the same time, I also feel like the only real kind of shortcoming the show has that I almost don't want him to really get with these girls because just his nature. He just doesn't really see himself romantically with any of them because they were his students. And so it is one of those ones where it kind of bothers you a little bit that it tries to be so harem-y, but it doesn't rely on it too heavily. It's usually only around Alicia, which is the one girl that brings him in. She's like the only one that it just gets a bit too much, like just move on kind of thing. But yeah, I love the fact that he at some point pretty much adopts a Roxy girl, brings him into his house, then he has to chase down rats. Those that know. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. Really good animation. There's some CGI usage in there, but I think with like the choreography, with the fighting itself, it's just like, it's so well done. Like, the fight scenes are so well done. But yeah, I highly recommend it. Number 6, from Old Country Bumpkin to Master Swordsman. Moving on to number 5, we have Mobile Suit Gundam Jikuatsu. Yes, the show that is the Hideaki Anno's take on the Gundam franchise. I found this show to be, while not perfect, I found it to be an absolute treat for me personally. Yes, I admit that I had a lot of hype coming into this show because we had the creator behind Evangelion working on it. We had character designs by Take, who did, Katana Gatari and Pokemon. There's a lot of really great people working on this project, so I set those expectations high. And yes, I will admit that at some point I was feeling like this wasn't going to turn out to be something great, and that's really around the main character, Amate, and Nyan, and Shuji. But what surprised me is that putting aside those characters, what I really loved was sort of getting back into the original Gundam franchise. We're going all the way back into 1979 with Char, Shalia, all these characters, the Zabi family, getting all mixed up and all that kind of stuff again. And doing this sort of alternate play out of what happened back then. Because one of the very first episodes shows that at some point, Char, in that very beginning moments of the original series, took the original Gundam and stole it. And it completely twisted everything in this timeline. And getting that stuff was like what I really, really enjoyed. As an old Gundam fan, I just ate that stuff up. But I did realize at some point, a lot of what I was enjoying about this series was because I knew that old franchise, because I knew those old characters. And it's one of those ones where at some point I'm going, this is probably one of those things that only like old time Gundam fans are really going to truly enjoy, because outside of that is kind of just all this other stuff that's happening, which is Amate, Nyan, them trying to get their footing in this whole massive possible additional war that could happen. Not to say their characters don't really have much going for them, because Amate is kind of in the realm of some kid that has everything that she really should want in her life, now wanting to break free from her family and go do her own thing. Basically run off with the bad boy, run off on the bike with the bad boy and run away from home kind of thing. Nyan is the character that really has nothing in her life. She's a refugee and she's trying to just kind of claw her way up to having some sort of stability and normalcy in her life. Shuji being sort of the vessel for the two of them in order to be able to find that outlet and get out of there. Jump in the Gundams, get away from this whole situation, get back to Earth, and enjoy the beautiful skies of Earth and the oceans. But unfortunately, they get tied up in with Shalia, who is desperately trying to find Char, and again, diving into the whole aspects of new types and the concepts of the other side they eventually kind of dive into. It was, again, a very interesting look into the Gundam franchise, but again, at the same time, I do want to put a caveat there that if you're not an original watcher of the original Gundam series, you're going to be probably a bit lost here. I almost feel like just watching the new Gundam Origin series would be enough to kind of dive into this one, but there's a lot of reference in there for the original series that I thought was very, very clever. But anyways, that's my number 5, Mobile Suit Gundam Jikuaksu. Moving on to my number 4, get your horse girls ready. Yes, Uma Musume, Cinderella Grey. I really, really, really enjoy this show. And it's pretty crazy because this is a show that I completely forgot was supposed to be in spring until like halfway through the show. And the moment that I turned it on, I could not stop watching it. It's just one of those shows that when you start watching it, the characters themselves, their motivations, what kind of drives them, and yes, the races themselves. I don't know how they keep doing it. No matter what studio is doing it, they just keeps working every single time. Having that kind of build up to the actual race themselves, the characters on the course itself, and then at some point you have that build up to who's going to win, and then it does, in a lot of cases, the same damn thing every single time, but for some reason, every single time it works, suddenly they do that last sprint. They kick their foot into the ground, and they push to the end, and the hype levels raise to the roof, and you're like, it keeps doing this, but I keep falling for it every time. Not that it always pans out, and that's always the big shockers they have there, but the races in Uma Musume have always managed to grab me, and I love it every single time. But outside of the races, yes, with Cinderella Grey specifically, is Oguri Cap. And I really honestly was not sure I was going to like this character. She's the type that is very much so simple-minded. Oguri Cap is very, very simple-minded in the idea that she is just doesn't seem to care about a lot of things that people care about. She's all about like, I just want to run, I want to run, I want to run. People are gossiping about her and she just does not care. She just wants to run, fill her gut full of food, and get out there and run again. But that really does kind of develop into some stuff that I really, really enjoyed. I really wasn't expecting to have such depth in Oguri Cap's character and the idea that eventually she does end up getting scouted by somebody, and there is this element where this person that scouts her doesn't have the license to be able to have her go to her full potential. He doesn't have the ability to get into the higher up levels that technically she should be able to do. But having sort of those moments where Oguri Cap sort of has to push back on him when he's trying to be selfless about the situation, I really did appreciate. There is this element of sort of wanting to seek out your dreams, but at the same time, having those around you that you want to experience that dream with. That path that you've chosen to walk with together, doing that path together. And that ultimately builds into other story elements. They get into the whole idea of not signing up for this higher class, and yet the public itself trying to push the rules to be broken for this individual. And then later on getting into Tamamo Cross, which, my gosh, I love Tamamo Cross. One of the aspects is because I love her Seiyu, but I loved her story. Getting to Tomo Cross's story and her sort of trying to break out of her norms, what she sort of has developed as being sort of her style, trying to break out of that and grow in her own way, was really fantastic. The cast of characters are just phenomenal. I really, really enjoyed them. The show itself was really well done. Again, the races, I absolutely love them. And yes, the performances afterwards. But yeah, number 4, Musume Cinderella Grey. Highly recommend it. Now we get into the top 3. The top 3 is pretty much when I was making my list, these 3 had to be in there. No matter what, these 3 were going to be my top 10 list, and they were going to be at the top. These are the shows that I think in the end, after the season is done and over with, you know, many seasons later, looking back on 2025, these are the shows that I'm going to tell everybody, yeah, these are the standouts. Starting with number 3, Kowloon Generic Romance. My gosh, please go watch this show. This show was so freaking good, and I was not expecting to love it as much as I did. Yes, there was a mystery tag. When I seen the mystery tag for this show, I'm like, wait, what? This looks like a more kind of adult romance show. What is this mystery tag for? And sure enough, within the first episode, I was poring over every single scene. This is kind of one of those shows where every single scene, the backgrounds, what the characters are doing, what they say, you can hang on everything and sort of write down notes and eventually have sort of a payoff moment where you go, I spotted that earlier and now it makes sense now. That was placed there for a reason. There's a lot of storytelling being done with the environment, what the characters are talking about, all kind of culminating around this really, really interesting concept here, which is, yes, our main character, Reiko, at some point finds out that her coworker, Kudo, had somebody that he was in love with, which looks exactly like her and has her name, and what the hell does that mean? And then there's this generic Terra that's floating atop of this location they're at, which is Kowloon, that seemingly people can upload their minds to so they can have everlasting life. If they get sick or whatever, they can just download their brain into a new body. There's all these weird kind of oddities about this setting that are all culminating into a very interesting story and romance between these individuals. I don't want to really talk about this story too much other than that very basic concept from the first episode, but I really do highly recommend people checking this out. This is one of those shows that I just, again, poured over every scene, absolutely love the mystery that was in it, the character developments over time, this massive emphasis on the idea of nostalgia, people wanting to sit still, not moving on, having regrets, trying to overcome those regrets. There's all these different kind of character struggle moments, character growth moments, that are all centered around the concept and the mystery that is within this place that's kind of very supernatural. I would actually suggest people to not really look too much into it, don't look into too many reviews, and just give like the first 4 episodes a shot. If it grabs you at that point, definitely keep watching it, because it is one of those ones that's kind of a roller coaster in what it kind of gets into. It's a very unique experience. I never really kind of experienced it anywhere else, and I had just a blast watching it. Again, Kowloon Generic Romance, my number 3, highly suggest it. For my number 2, Apocalypse Hotel. Please go watch Apocalypse Hotel. This show was an absolute masterpiece, and I have no clue where to even begin. The concept here is that you have Yachio, who is the head robot maid that is working at this hotel. At some point, mankind was getting sick and dying away from this pandemic, and they decide to flee into space until whatever is happening to them dies away on the planet, and they can return back to the planet once it's kind of restored itself and continue living on Earth. Well, Yachio, as she's sitting there waiting over courses of hundreds and hundreds of years, is sitting there waiting for the day that humankind will come back to Earth and come back in this hotel and they can welcome into the hotel. And so they're maintaining the hotel. Everything around them is becoming overgrown by plants, but the hotel, with all of its robots kind of maintaining it, it's kind of staying pristine. And what this sort of turns into is a mixture of 2 elements. One aspect is that Yashio the entire time is kind of struggling over the fact that, yes, eventually these robots are going to break down. They are running out of parts. They're running out of supplies and whatnot to actually function the location. And she's wondering if there's a possibility that humankind will ever return. But then, yes, at some point, aliens start showing up. Random aliens start making visits to the hotel, coming in there, and Yashio and the staff have to figure out how to communicate to the aliens, what the sort of oddities that are going to come with those aliens, what are their needs and necessities, and as these service robots, their highest priority is to make sure that these aliens, whatever guest it is, has like the best time possible in this hotel. And it just turns into some of the most crazy shenanigan moments coming from that alone. But yes, what I really did love about this show is that every single episode manages to do something completely different than the previous episode. In one episode, you'll have this one alien shows up and she's just struggling with trying to figure out how to communicate to it, and she constantly thinks that she's doing the wrong thing and she's going to fail in her service to make the alien happy. And then you'll have another episode where they have to go to another location in order to get supplies, and they end up running into a massive tremor, and one of their new staffers, which is an alien, which is a Tanuki, decides to kind of overcome her fears being a Tanuki, always being a coward, and suddenly bust out a chainsaw and try to take on this tremor, but only to be terrified and run away like a Tanuki does. It's just like every single episode just does something completely bonkers and different than the previous episode. You have episodes that get into like loss. You have some episodes that get into, again, Yashio's insecurities about the return of humankind. Every single episode does something different, and it's all beautifully done by Saigen Picture. I mean, the directing and the storytelling, the writing, the seiyus, the voicing, everything was just so beautifully done. This is easily going to go down as one of my favorite shows of all time. Probably up there, and easily probably the 30 mark. At least my top 30 shows of all time. I just think everything about the show is just absolutely brilliantly done, and I highly suggest checking it out. And that all brings us to my number one anime of the spring 2025 anime season. Without a doubt, there's no contest here. I'm sorry. Nothing was going to dethrone this thing. I'm sorry. Nothing was going to dethrone it. Yes, the Apothecary Diaries second season. My gosh, I absolutely love this franchise. In every single episode, it feels like it just keeps getting better and better and better. The writing behind this series has been absolutely phenomenal. Going into the second season, really kind of building into, probably say the more deeper core subject here is around Jinshi. His struggles with the fact that he does have a position that eventually has to become public to everybody else. And yes, bringing Mao Mao into the picture and kind of informing her what's going on with him. Because yes, because of his position, eventually she will be put in some sort of danger because of it. And just kind of seeing how this is all kind of building into the Shi clan, bringing them into the picture, getting more into Lolan's character, which for like the later part of season 1, I kind of wanted to get a little bit more into. It does feel like whenever this writer gets into one of these characters, I just absolutely eat it up. And they do so well of sort of intertwining the characters as well. Even though you do have like a focus trying to go more into somebody else specifically, the other characters somehow get pulled into it in some different way that just makes it all work together. Like there's just so many moving parts. There's so many characters in this. There's such a big cast, and every single one of these characters are so well wrote in that they have driving force. They have their own desires. They have their conflicts. They have their loyalties that all seem to kind of come together so beautifully. This writer is just absolutely phenomenal what they do. I really have to say, like, the later parts of this season got me to the point where I'm getting emotionally invested in the characters, to the point where I'm furious. And I think to have the ability to have that anger build up inside of me over what's happening to the characters is a surefire sign this writer has me by the gut. They have my emotion built in these characters. I have a love and a connection for the characters that I rarely ever see in much other shows. Like, I don't want something to happen to these characters, and something's happening to these characters, and it infuriates me. And I just want some Hollywood ending to make everything happy. Like, have Jinshi come in there and say, everything is fine, everybody stop, I'm pulling out the easy card. But no, this writer doesn't do that. This writer does manage to stick to their guns, and I think that is honestly a bold move for a lot of writers to set something up, establish the rules, and follow through with them, even if it infuriates me. And I just love it. Again, I think this writer is genius. I've loved this franchise so freaking much, to the point where I want to dive into the source material at some point. But yes, I highly recommend it. If you're not watching this series, it is just writing that is unmatched by really most all of the shows. And that is it. That is my top 10 anime of the spring season. For my honorable mentions, I have Two Perfect Saint. I really did enjoy that show, mostly around the sister. Like, I didn't care much for the Two Perfect Saint that nobody appreciates and they treat her horribly, but then she finds a kingdom where everybody loves her and she could be free and now she's appreciated. No, the old kingdom, that's the stuff that I ate up. The whole revenge plot and everything over there, that's what I just really enjoyed. So it's like half the show was just kind of boring, but it was still good. Shunji Family, I like it for the female characters, but like typical with the Rent-A-Girlfriend writer, I hate the main character, so its weakness is the main character. But other than that, I really enjoyed it. Fire Force Season 3, I enjoyed it more than I did the previous season, so it is definitely picking up for me. Again, we cooked on Tamaki's So what more do you want? Yes, I really enjoyed watching Licorice Coil. Friends are thieves of time, but it's like a super, super short, so I didn't want to put it in my list, but I really did enjoy it. I think its only downfall is the fact that it's so short. It just was like a tease. Like, I want more. Why would you even give this to me? It's not enough on the plate. I want more. Machina-san, I really enjoy that show. Machina-san is a love bot. It was just a really fun, refreshing, ecchi show that didn't look as bad as Yandere Elf. It looked good for the most part. It wasn't great, but it just had some really kind of dumb, ecchi, raunchy humor that I really enjoyed, so I enjoyed it. And my last one I'll mention is Moonrise. Again, Wit Studio put a lot of effort in that show. It looked really, really good. My only problem with Moonrise is that the first half was very lacking, but the second half was really, really good. So it's one of those shows where it's like, I really enjoyed it. I think the second half was really fun and entertaining, but it's a show that's hard to recommend to people because, on my experience, half of the show is blah, and it's hard to recommend going through 9 episodes before it gets good. But it was a really fantastic looking show. First episode alone was really epic. And yes, like I said before, I'm still continuing watching Uchiha Mumu. Really, really loving that show. Summer Pockets has been fantastic. It's like an old-fashioned key visual novel type of show that I'm really enjoying. The chemistry is just fantastic. Yaiba, I'm absolutely loving that, dude. Yaiba is just so incredibly put together visually, animation-wise. It's just a fun little like old school type of, yes, Dragon Ball, character trying to get stronger to face their rival type of show. Witchwatch has been a lot of fun as well. I think the characters in the show are just absolute goofballs, and I just love the shenanigans they get into. To Be Hero X has been phenomenal, and I figure that's probably going to end up in my top list of the next season. I'm just loving that show. It's just visually, it's incredible. Very simple stories, but at the same time, impactful stories. Story of the Demon Hunter, still loving that show. Again, like I've mentioned before, it's a very Mushishi type of show with a guy kind of traveling around, solving different mysteries around demons, and then taking down the opponents, absorbing their skills. And all the stories so far have been really phenomenal. And then finally, yes, I'm still watching Anne Shirley. And Shirley the brat as she grows up and matures. But a very beautiful show that I just absolutely love. But that's it. That's my rundown of the spring season. I hope you guys enjoyed my top 10 list. Hopefully you found something here that you didn't notice before that you'll be checking out. Like I said, all else aside, just watch Apocalypse Hotel. Watch Apothecary Diaries. And yes, if you like a more adult romance mystery show, Kowloon. Those three, at least those three. But I know that a lot of people, as a posting of this video, they got a lot to be watching right now because this summer season is looking insane. And I hope that you guys will join me for that. Definitely stick around if you're new here. Make sure to subscribe before you leave. But if you like this content, if you found something here informational that you enjoyed and you want to support the channel, become a member of the channel, hit that like button down below, leave me a comment. But until next time, y'all take care.